will pay a price if it ignores the threat of terrorism brewing in Somalia. Representatives of more than 50 countries and organisations are meeting here in London. This is the scene at the Foreign Office at the moment, to try to combat piracy and radicalism and put the failed state on a sure political footing. We're awaiting, as you can see, a news conference from that conference shortly.
The problems in Somalia don't just affect Somalia, they affect us all. In a country where there is so little hope, where there is chaos and violence and terrorism, pirates are disrupting vital trade routes and kidnapping tourists. Young minds are being poisoned by radicalism, breeding terrorism that is threatening not just Somalia but the whole world. If the rest of us just sit back and look on, we will pay a price for doing so.
The position of the United States is straightforward. Attempts to obstruct progress and maintain the broken status quo will not be tolerated. We will encourage the international community to impose further sanctions, including travel bans and asset freezes, on people inside and outside the TFG who seek to undermine Somalia's peace and security or to delay or even prevent the political transition.
I look forward to the day that Somali forces ensure security. This is a bold agenda. We have no more time to wait and see. To any donors who are still wavering, I say, get off the fence, help prevent another famine, and offer new hope to Somalia. Somalia have shown astounding resilience in the face of extreme hardship.
We would like to assure you all of you who have sympathized with us, that we have come here to thank you first, and then to tell you that yes, indeed, there is some hope. The Somali people are looking at you all at this conference, having suffered for so many long years. We hope that there will be recommendations and resolutions which will lead us to optimism so that we can contain this problem and we'll have the modalities to find a solution to this problem.
Well, Sky Security and Defence editor Sam Kiley is in Mogadishu, and he spoke to fighters who've defected from the Islamist militant group Al-Shabaab. They claim that foreigners are being trained to attack the West.
The Shabaab would like you to think that scenes like this are coming soon to a shopping mall near you. This is the latest car bomb in Mogadishu. 2 people were injured in this attack. Shabaab infiltrators still infest Mogadishu. We recruited local security to take us a short distance to meet with recent defectors from the extreme Islamist movement. The Shabaab are training foreigners to carry out attacks overseas, most likely in Britain.
I heard them saying, if we are defeated here, then we will carry out bombings in England, and we will transfer the jihad to there. They were holding British passports. They were saying, we are planning to go back to the UK. That is what they were saying.
200 foreigners, among them at least 50 Britons, are believed to be in the movement which recently joined Al-Qaeda's global jihad. The London conference is discussing how to rid Somalia of the Shabaab and end its 2 decades of rule by warlords. The Shabaab have been actively recruiting in the UK, broadcasting its message over the internet.
For us, a chance to fight for our beliefs is the best thing that can happen to us in this world. And the fact that we may be killed in this path is nothing but glad tidings.
But Mohammed Dahir and Mahat Abdi said it was the brutality of the Shabaab which drove them to defect.
We defected from Al-Shabaab because of the harassment and the very poor living conditions when we were in Al-Shabaab.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Foreign Office. First of all, can I thank everyone for coming today, leaders from countries right across the world, right across Africa, and also all of the key international institutions. And it's great to be joined at this press conference by the Secretary General of the United Nations, by the leader of the African Union, Dr. Jean Ping, and also by the Prime Minister of the Transitional Federal Government in Somalia. very grateful for everyone coming together in London today and for making this conference such a success. After 2 decades of bloodshed and some of the worst poverty on earth, there are the first signs of fragile progress in Somalia. International aid has pulled Somalia back from the brink of humanitarian crisis. African Union and Somali troops have pushed al-Shabaab out of Mogadishu. But most important of all, as we heard repeatedly today, the Somali people themselves are taking steps to agree a successor to the transitional federal government, with a new government properly accountable to all of the Somali people. Supporting these efforts is not just right for the people of Somalia, it is right for the whole world. Because when pirates are disrupting vital trade routes and kidnapping tourists, and when radicalism is poisoning young minds and breeding terrorism, it is in all our interests to support the Somali people in taking back their country. Of course, there is no single solution that will help make all of the difference. This is a complex jigsaw puzzle where every piece has to be put into place. It's all about the patient work of helping the Somali people to rebuild their country from the bottom up. So today we have reached agreements in 7 key areas: on security, on piracy, on terrorism, on humanitarian assistance, on local stability, on a reinvigorated political process, and on international coordination. And I'm going to very briefly say a word about each one. First, security. Yesterday, the United Nations Security Council agreed Resolution 2036 that extends the mandate of African Union forces in Somalia beyond Mogadishu and increases the number of troops from 12,000 to 17,730. This was the first success, if you like, of this conference. It gives the African Union forces the resources they need to put al-Shabaab permanently into retreat. The next stage will be for the Somalis themselves to provide for even more of their security. Second, keeping up the pressure on piracy. Mauritius, Tanzania, and the Seychelles have agreed to take pirates for prosecutions. Somaliland and Puntland will take back convicted pirates later this year for imprisonment. And just as there will be no impunity for pirates, there will be no impunity for those who fund them either, because of our new Centre for Coordinating Intelligence and Pursuing the Kingpins of Piracy. We've also agreed a new international task force on pirate ransoms, with the ultimate ambition of ending such payments and stopping this crime from paying. Third, on counterterrorism, we all agreed to disrupt the travel and financing of terrorists in the region. This includes implementing the Financial Action Task Force recommendations on combating money laundering and financing of terrorism. Fourth, on humanitarian assistance, we've agreed to continue providing help to those in need, and today Britain is leading the way with extra money to help refugees in Kenya and Ethiopia. Fifth, on local stability, I'm delighted that Denmark, Norway, the United Arab Emirates, and the Netherlands are joining us today in setting up a local stability fund. This is absolutely vital for those areas that have been freed of al-Shabaab control to help people build a network of safer, better governed areas and show those people in areas still held by Shabaab that there is a better alternative. Sixth and most crucially, the political process. In the short term, all the measures that I've described to improve security, stability, development, they are all essential in the short term, but Somalia's long-term future hinges on the political will to forge a new and representative government. Today's conference has put new momentum into the political process. We've backed the Somalis' decision to end the mandate of the transitional federal institutions in August. This timetable will be stuck to. There will be no further extensions, and we will hold the Somalis to this. We'll act against those who stand in the way of the peace process, and we've also agreed the formation of a new government must be as inclusive as possible. Today's conference has given this real impetus. The Garaway principles agreed last week chart the route to a broad-based constituent assembly which will determine a new government for Somalia. 30% of its members will be women. All regions will be represented. Let me be absolutely clear. There will be no negotiation with terrorists, but there will be an opportunity via a proper program for those who are willing to reject violence and turn away from al-Shabaab to join the political process. The new government must be free from corruption and accountable to its people. So we've agreed to establish a new joint financial management board to make sure that the revenue from key assets is used for the good of Somali people. This was something that British Somalis who came to Downing Street this week particularly pressed for. They're right, and I'm glad that it has been secured. Finally, we've agreed to reform the International Contact Group so there's no let-up in our focus in the months between now and the next conference in Istanbul in June. This conference, I believe, is the next stage in a long journey for the people of Somalia. There is a very real opportunity within our grasp. We must now follow through on all of the agreements we've reached today so that together we can make this conference a turning point in achieving greater stability, greater security, and greater prosperity for Somalia, for the region, and for the world. Thank you very much for listening. Very happy to take some questions. If you put your hands up, a microphone will come, and if you could say who you are and who you're directing your question to. Start with Glenn O'Gaza from Sky News.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. You said in your speech earlier that a phrase that I thought rang out: Somali children should be holding books, not guns. To achieve that, though, and to defeat piracy, you first of all surely have to comprehensively militarily defeat al-Shabaab. So the question is, will Britain and her allies inevitably be involved in airstrikes against their training camps and bases in Somalia in order to achieve that military defeat? And will the UK's contribution to AMISOM in terms of trainers and setting up a staff headquarters perhaps in Mogadishu, is that also an inevitable consequence of that wish? And I wonder if I could ask Prime Minister Abdiweli Mohammed Ali, if I may, would you welcome airstrikes against al-Shabaab training camps and bases inside Somalia? Thank you.
Okay. Well, first of all, look, there is a military campaign that is taking place against al-Shabaab. That is a campaign being waged by AMISOM, but also by the Kenyan forces and by Ethiopian forces. But I think part of what this conference is about is saying, yes, of course, there has to be that military pressure on al-Shabaab, but actually the future of Somalia does also depend on a proper political process. Those young people who take up guns for al-Shabaab, they need to be able to see that there is a future in a prosperous, stable Somalia that offers them what everyone wants, whether in the African world or the Arab world, which is a job and a voice. So the connection between the military action to put huge pressure on Shabaab, which has been happening, and the political process, the connection, they are two sides of the same coin. In terms of the second part of your question, the whole point about this is not something of Western troops getting involved in a campaign in another country. This is about the countries of the world and the institutions of the international community coming together to support people in Somalia and to support the neighbors of Somalia. That is what we're talking about, and I think it's a very important lesson for us all to learn, and that is why we want to see, as I said, young people with books and not guns. Prime Minister.
We welcome targeted airstrikes against Al-Qaeda in Somalia. However, the protection of the safety and the lives and the property of the Somali people is also very important. Therefore, we have to avoid any injury or death of lives of the people of Somalia. However, we welcome again, as I said again, the targeted airstrikes against Al-Qaeda in Somalia. And reason being, Al-Qaeda in Somalia is not a Somali problem. It is a global problem, and it has to be addressed globally. So therefore, we have to have a common strategy against this common enemy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the gentleman back there.
Home Cable, London. My question is, what role does the UK see itself playing in Somalia, both in the short term and the long term? And another question is the security that they're providing now, is it a long term or the short term?
Well, the UK's role in both, particularly in the short term, the UK's role has been to help bring people together at this conference, and also we have been leading players in providing aid to the Horn of Africa to try and help prevent the famine. So we played a very big and positive role in that regard. I think in the longer term, What we want to see is a political process in Somalia, which of course we will support. We'll support as friends and as members of